So, now that we've covered the origin of the terms lexicology and lexicography, we will look a bit into the roots of the computational lexicography. As early as the 1960s, some computational work was done on dictionaries and thesauri, but it was not until the early 1980s that typesetting tapes of dictionaries became available, and that machine-readable dictionaries, henceforth MRDs, gained the interest of researchers from several disciplines dealing with the question of how to make computer understand human language. Dictionaries were recognized as large repositories of organized knowledge about language and the everyday world. This knowledge could potentially be used to build the computational lexicons and lexical knowledge bases needed by the computer to process human language. So far, lexicons were generated by hand, which resulted in small toy systems, usually with no more than a few hundred entries. MRDs were considered as a means to achieve larger-scale, real-world applications. The use of MRDs involved two questions. The first one was whether the information in dictionaries was the type of information needed by language understanding computers. The answer is not entirely. Although a dictionary contains a large amount of valuable information, a computational lexicon needs to be more comprehensive, more structured, more explicit, more consistent, and more formalized than a dictionary for human use. Bogoraev and Briscoe, in their work from 1999, report on research involving techniques for semi-automatic information extraction from the Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English, and the use of the extracted information for various NLP purposes. Rather than extracting information from a single MRD, researchers also investigated the possibility of extracting and storing information from multiple MRDs in one lexical database for NLP, for instance Bird, Bogoraev and Briscoe, and Atkins. At the end of the 1980s, techniques for automatic analysis of large text corpora were still rather basic. The special issue of Journal Computational Linguistics on using large corpora in 1993 demonstrates that this situation had changed substantially within a few years. In the introduction, Church and Mercer explained the revival of empirism, in other words, data-driven rather than the rule-based approaches in computational linguistics, as being fueled by three developments: more powerful computers, the availability of huge amounts of machine-readable data, and the emphasis on deliverables and evaluation due to political and economic changes. There was and is a need for robust NLP components dealing with real texts, in other words, real language use, to be incorporated in high-quality language industry products. Large-scale text corpora were recognized as the primary source of data needed to build these natural language processing components. In lexicography, corpora enable a more efficient, exhaustive cataloging of word senses and collocations than is possible with introspection alone. For instance, see works from Kjellmer, Sinclair, and Sinclair and Kirby from 1990s. In addition, they enable systematic attention to contrasts between spoken and written uses of words. Contrasts in meaning as a function of position in the utterance or prosodic features, and the relative frequencies of word senses. For instance, see Altenberger's work from 1990s for a comparison of corpus-based dictionaries. The enormous amounts of data, even from fewer genres, is extremely important in lexicography to detect words and collocations which occur only rarely. The high costs of developing such corpora encouraged the reuse of existing corpora, among others the corpora of national institutions traditionally concerned with scholarly corpus-based lexicography. The very existence of the Data Distribution Centers, Linguistic Data Consortium, and European Language Resources Association is based on the concept of reusability. In order to provide medium-sized language industry companies with the required data, the European Commission supported many projects developing generic data and tools for use in monolingual and multilingual product development. The Linguistic Data Consortium, LDC, is an open consortium of universities, libraries, corporations, and government research laboratories. It was formed in 1992 to address the critical data shortage then facing language technology research and development. The Advanced Research Project Agency provided seed funding for the consortium, and the National Science Foundation provided additional support via grant from the Information and Intelligence Systems Division. Initially, LDC's primary role was as a repository and distribution point for language resources. Since that time, and with the help of its members, LDC has grown into an organization that creates and distributes a wide array of language resources. LDC also supports sponsored research programs and language-based technology evaluations by providing resources and contributing organizational expertise. ACL Data Collection Initiative contains texts from the Wall Street Journal, the Collins English Dictionary, scientific abstracts provided by the U.S. Department of Energy, and a variety of grammatically tagged and parsed materials from the TreeBank project at the University of Pennsylvania. The many formats of the original texts have been mapped into a markup language consistent with the SGML standard, which is ISO standard 8879. A frequently reused MRD is Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English, a dictionary for learners of English. It was an early MRD, and the publisher gave researchers permission to reuse it. It has some properties that facilitate linguistic computation. The entries have a simple and regular syntax. Word senses are defined using a controlled core vocabulary of about 2,000 words, and different code systems represent sets of syntactic categories, semantic primitives, and subject domain categories, respectively. Poguraev and Briscoe in 1987 developed a program that transforms the grammar codes of verbs into lexical entries to be used by a grammatical parser. The entries have a theory-neutral representation, which can be further transformed into theory-specific formats. The typesetting tape could not directly serve as input for the program. First, the compressed code system used to save space in the printed dictionary had to be decompacted and restructured. They conclude that the generation of verb entries by use of the grammar codes is viable and labor-saving, but due to manual errors and inconsistencies, this process must be interactive rather than automatic. They also conclude that neither the contents nor the form of any existing dictionary meet all the requirements of an NLP system. Al-Shawi in 1989 developed a definition analyzer that automatically converts sense definitions into formal representations specifying the semantic head and the additional information such as expressing purpose, properties, etc. He uses a mechanism of top-down phrasal pattern matching. The result should be a classification scheme of entities that NLP systems can use to cope with occurrences of words unknown to the system. A preliminary version of the program detected 77% of the semantic heads correctly and 61% of the additional information, of which 88% correctly. Penterodakis and van der Wende in 1993 wanted to support a broad coverage Microsoft NLP system by automatically identifying classes of morphologically related words and establishing links between individual senses of the derived form and one or more senses of the base form. Basically, they use Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English, inflectional information, and the sense definitions. The morphological processor works fairly well, with success rate over 90%. WordNet, as a freely available hand-constructed lexical database of English, was designed in 1998 on psycholinguistic principles. It is, however, widely used in NLP-oriented research. The principal mode of organization is the synonym set, a group of words referring to the same concept. Words and synsets are linked to other words and synsets by means of conceptual, semantic, and lexical relations that we will further discuss in one of the next units. Chai, in 2000, uses WordNet for information extraction. In other words, the identification and extraction of domain-specific target information from a document and grouping this information into a coherent structure called template. The extraction rules are automatically obtained by computational machine learning techniques as opposed to manual approaches. EuroWordNet has been implemented by Verdejo and Associates in 2000 in a system for cross-language information retrieval. This system concerns the automatic query-based selection of relevant documents only from a large multilingual collection of documents, for instance the World Wide Web. Verdejo's search system integrates several NLP modules and EuroWordNet databases of English, Spanish, Catalan, and Basque, including an interlingual index which links all monolingual WordNets. The system was developed for comparing different approaches to cross-language information retrieval. One approach is to translate the user's query into the target languages via the interlingual index. This method comes close to dictionary-based cross-language information retrieval, but this system profits from the semantic relations available. Lexical databases may represent central parts of the NLP system. Most applications, such as parsers, text generation systems, need both syntactic and semantic information about words and how to combine them into sentences. In the late 80s, lexical databases were designed to support information retrieval, natural language understanding, and text generation. Lexical database is a vocabulary presented in machine-readable form and consisting of several domains. Its main advantage, compared to traditional dictionaries, is the possibility to present information in a format that enables the computer to locate efficiently various types of information specified for a given class of words. It has the possibility of compiling lists of words possessing a common feature or a set of features. So, as Sinclair in 1987 put it, the database should be a real lexical database, not an electronic version of a paper-based dictionary. It should also contain exhaustive information about the general English vocabulary. It should be possible to extract reference work from the database. It should also contain more information than any of the reference works. It should be flexible enough as to allow restructuring the information or the design of the database. And finally, it should offer feedback to the lexicographers during the compilation process, allowing them to assess to semantically or syntactically related entries. MRC, Psycholinguistic Database, described in Coulthard's work from 1981, consists of more than 150,000 entries from the shorter OED with various forms of additional information, including part of speech, the British pronunciation, rating of concreteness, familiarity, and frequencies for various subsets of words. The co-built Collins Birmingham University International Database project started in the early 1980s, and its participants were the Birmingham University and the Collins Publishing House. Its goal was to investigate and describe the English language by means of computational techniques. In order to do this, an initial corpus of 7 million contemporary English words from different sources was built. A team of lexicographers was hired for the creation of a database that would record the semantic and syntactic observations that stemmed from the analysis of individual words in the corpus. The computational resources that the co-built project developed through the years are the corpus management software, the software for the creation of the dictionaries. These resources were integrated in such a way that the information extracted from the corpus could be included in the database designed for the creation of dictionaries. The lexicographer could move from the corpus to the database, to modify the information in the database in case of encountering new linguistic information in the corpus, and to check for inconsistencies in the information stored in the database. Center for Lexical Information, CELEX, has a relational database containing lexical data on present-day Dutch, around 40,000 word forms, and English, around 150,000 word forms, and also German, around 51,000 word forms, that it makes available to institutes and companies for language and speech research and for the development of language and speech-oriented technological systems. It contains detailed information on orthography, phonology, morphology, and syntax, as well as word frequencies based on the co-built corpus described above, along with additional syntactic and semantic subcategorizations to establish semantic links among the three databases. Finally, LOLA, Linguistic-Oriented Lexical Database Approach, was a set of tools developed to give support first to the IBM-sponsored Logical Programming-Based Machine Translation System, and then to the Translexit system, a terminology management system also developed by IBM. Both systems have a set of bilingual lexicons for the following language pairs: English-German, German-English, and English-Spanish. Despite the new possibilities, during 1990s, as Atkins and Randall point out, lexicographers continued to write dictionary entries on paper, increasingly using structured forms, and it was left to computer specialists to input the data. In 1990s, it became clear that lexicographic data are no longer relevant to lexicography only, but also for the builders of computational lexicons. A further step is to design new dictionaries with the use for NLP purposes in mind, or to create a lexical resource as a basis for both a dictionary and a computational lexicon. A link between a dictionary and a corpus makes particular sense if the corpus words are not only lemmatized, but also sense-tagged, and sense tagging is also used to solve the problem of word sense disambiguation in NLP. Another point of shared interest concerns the lexical category of collocations or bound word combinations, as opposed to single-word lemmas. The appropriate definition, selection, and description of collocations are a problem not only for lexicographers, but also for the builders of computational lexicons. In NLP, collocations cannot be understood or produced by using general rules of the language. There are also other shared points of interest. Lexicographic products will certainly be integrated into systems with linked dictionaries, lexicons, text corpora, grammars, and other linguistic resources with multiple uses in research, translation, language teaching, terminology,